And Olivia Salazar-Winspear joins us now from the Culture Desk to take us through the cultural place that the Queen occupied in British society. And Olivia, her image has become, in many ways, emblematic of the UK itself.
Yes, well, as you know, Annette, she was known for her discretion, but that didn't stop many artists depicting Queen Elizabeth II, starting with photographer Cecil Beaton at her coronation in 1953, that iconic image we've seen on the front of many newspapers this morning. And then, of course, Andy Warhol in the 1980s, Lucian Freud in 2001. The National Portrait Gallery in London has a collection of 967 images of her. But I think a really important depiction of the Queen was, in fact, the film entitled The Queen. Stephen Frears directed it in 2006 because it was perhaps the most ambitious attempt to date to pin down her personality and identify her place in British society. And it was quite shocking at the time to see the monarch played by an actor and quote-unquote written by a director and a screenwriter who could take a bit of artistic license if they wanted to. Now, the film was a commercial and critical success in no small part thanks to the performance of Helen Mirren, who played the Queen. And I got the chance to sit down with Helen Mirren last year at the Cannes Film Festival, where she told us a bit more about taking on that role.
Basically, I studied her from before she knew that she was going to be Queen. I think of the Queen as a submarine. You know, she's a submarine and she's swimming along there with all of her own personality, her own thoughts, her own fears, her own insecurities, loves, you know, obsessions, all of the things that make her. And then the Queen that we see is like the periscope that comes up and just sort of looks around. And we see the periscope. We don't see the submarine, you know. So I wanted to see her be the submarine.
So that film, The Queen, marked a real turning point in her public image, I think, because we saw a more accessible, more emotional figure. She was expressing her sadness at the death of Princess Diana because the film is set in 1997. And of course, that paved the way for the runaway success of the recent series, The Crown, which was broadcast on Netflix.
I was just waiting for you to mention.
So this is what we all know about recently. It's true. It's in the air. It was created by the same screenwriter as The Queen, Peter Morgan, and it follows the young princess in the late 1940s, her marriage, her coronation, all the way up until the present day. And the 5th season of that series will debut in November, with actress Imelda Staunton playing the Queen Elizabeth of the 1990s, because younger versions were played by Claire Foy and Olivia Colman. Now, Peter Morgan, the showrunner, of course, reacted to the news yesterday, saying that his series was a love letter to the Queen and that the show would likely pause filming just briefly as a mark of respect. Now, of course, we know all these fictional inspired by true events versions, but there was a recent documentary, actually, that tries to get closer to the woman behind the figurehead. It's called Elizabeth, A Portrait in Parts, and that was released at the end of May this year to coincide with the Platinum Jubilee. It's made up of a lot of archive footage, and you see a very sort of irreverent, playful take on the human being behind that status. It's made by the late Roger Mitchell. Let's take a look.
It was all a very sudden kind of taking on. It's a question of maturing into something that one's got used to doing. And accepting the fact that here you are and it's your fate.
God save the Queen!
Ow! It's my foot you're standing on. Yep.
I have to say here, I did actually meet the Queen many years ago, and I can attest that she does indeed have a wicked sense of humour.
Does come across.
It's I can see just from that small taste, it certainly is the case. Now, in her later years, the Queen herself actually joined in and got involved in some rather key British cultural moments.
That's right, yeah. I think perhaps the highlight of the London 2012 Olympic opening ceremony was when the Queen parachuted into the proceedings with James Bond. You can see her there with Daniel Craig, who plays Bond, of course, all orchestrated by director Danny Boyle. The parachuting part was perhaps a stunt double, I think we can say, but she did film that sequence in Buckingham Palace with Daniel Craig, and there were gasps in the stadium when that took place. And then 10 years later, in June of this year, for the Platinum Jubilee, she appeared in a short film with children's literature character Paddington, who's now a hugely popular CGI persona in a series of films. That was a very touching, sweet film, spoke to many generations in British society, and it was definitely applauded because the Queen would have been acting in front of an empty chair there. Paddington would have been animated in afterwards, so well done her. And Paddington, of course, or his social media handlers, let's say, echoed the sentiment of that video on social media yesterday with a tweet paying tribute to the monarch, one of the many, many personalities, brands and institutions to react to the news. Tributes came in from absolutely every sector of British society.
We were talking there about how so often she was represented by others, but she certainly had a hand in building her own image, and she's done that through clothes, hasn't she?
Yeah. Well, when it came to fashion, she was known in her later years, you will have seen, for her fabulous deployment of colour. Many people said that was so she could be spotted in a crowd easily. She had her signature handbag made by the British brand Lorna. She often had a Burberry or Hermes scarf, keeping her hair in place when she was off duty at the weekend in her country home, Balmoral. She was always a supporter of British designers from day one, the people who designed and tailored her formal wear for the coronation, her wedding dress, that sort of thing. But even more young, trendy designers. She was seated in the front row at London Fashion Week in 2018 for Richard Quinn's show, and she was somebody, of course, who decorated plenty of British artists. In music, for example, she knighted Paul McCartney, Elton John and Mick Jagger, but she had a lot of support for the fashion industry too. Today, Mary Quant, Zandra Rhodes, Vivienne Westwood are all dames, thanks to Queen Elizabeth II. And there were times when she also used her wardrobe with, let's say, to express herself subtly, using pieces of jewellery with historical significance. For example, she wore a brooch that was gifted to her by Barack Obama when she was receiving then-President Donald Trump on a state visit in London. And there was a memorable occasion at the opening of the UK Parliament in 2017 when she wore a blue hat decked with yellow flowers, a blue coat as well, that definitely echoes the EU flag. I don't know if you can see it, but a year after the Brexit referendum, that gesture was interpreted by many as a vote for Europe, or at least a strong show of solidarity with European people.
Indeed, there was a lot of speculation about the colours of her outfit. Thank you so much, Olivia Salazar-Winspear.